Ahoy everyone, Tightrope here. Today I'm going to show you all of my settings for Company Heroes 3 and the related PC settings to help you get the best experience and performance from your Co3 sessions. We begin with two important PC settings. The first is for your RAM. Is it running at full speed? Basically, if you have an Intel CPU, you want XMP enabled, or for AMD CPUs, you want Expo enabled. Otherwise, you are leaving extra performance on the table. If you have a pre-built PC, there is a chance they didn't enable this. Or if you have updated your BIOS, you may have forgotten to turn this back on. The exact steps to enable XMP varies depending on what brand motherboard you have, so I recommend looking up a guide specific to your hardware. The next setting is Resizable BAR, which is also known as Smart Access Memory if you have an AMD GPU. This feature is available on relatively new graphics cards, NVIDIA 3000 series and onwards, and AMD 6000 series and onwards. Now there is some debate about whether rebar helps or hurts with certain games, but I tested Co3 myself and having rebar turned off lost me 7% of my FPS, so for Co3 make sure rebar is turned on. You can check if rebar is enabled in Windows, but if it isn't, then once again you will have to go into your BIOS and turn it on, so look up a guide on how to do that for your hardware configuration. Now I will cover my settings going from top to bottom. Controls. I only have one custom hotkey. I have bound Toggle Tactical Map to numpad 0, same as it is in Co2. I have also made one of the side buttons on my mouse numpad 0. This mouse bind makes using the tactical map far easier, and I think the tactical map is very helpful. I have sticky selection turned off, and we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into what this setting does, because there are some players that prefer to have this on. With sticky selection on, when you have a unit selected and you go to select a different unit, but miss and click nothing on the ground instead, you will still have the original unit selected. What this led to for me was when I was trying to select a unit to retreat and missed my selection, I am going so fast that I don't double check what is selected and would then give the retreat command to the previously controlled unit, costing me map control. With sticky selection off, a misclick like this will result in having no unit selected, so the retreat command would apply to nothing. So turning sticky selection off reduces the problems caused by misselections. Because left-click selections in this game can be a bit wonky at times. I can't fucking click on this! Why can't I click on this? Squad decorators can jump around as models die, making them harder to click.
No! He's dead! Don't stop fighting!
And screen shake can move your cursor off a unit. I feel these factors make sticky selection off the safest option. Having sticky selection on can be helpful, mainly for vehicle control when you try to give an invalid command to the vehicle. For instance, with the recon tractor, usually you can give it a reverse command. But when its Vet1 lockdown mode is active, reverse doesn't exist. So with sticky selection off, if you forget that it is in lockdown mode and try to give a reverse command, you will deselect the recon tractor, because this counts as a left click on the ground. But repeating this with sticky selection on, you will maintain selection of the tractor, so can more quickly deactivate lockdown and give the reverse command again. Both have their strengths, but I find avoiding giving commands to incorrect units more helpful than maintaining selection when I give an incorrect input. Moving on to camera settings. To pan the camera, I mainly use moving the cursor to the edge of the screen, and occasionally use middle mouse button drags, not because I think this is the most efficient style, It's just that edge scrolling is what I'm used to as a legacy RTS player. I have turned my screen edge pan speed up slightly, and this means my cursor can be on the edge of the screen for a shorter duration to get the same amount of movement. Changing this can feel a bit jarring at first, but I think it is worth it. Be aware that there is a bit of a bug with Code 3 at the moment. Keep your eye on the minimum frame rate here and the graph that shows the dips. If I have my mouse's polling rate set to 1000 Hz and use the middle mouse button to move the camera around, you can see that I am experiencing some big frame drops. But when I turn my polling rate down to 500 Hz and then repeat those movements, the frame drops disappear. So hopefully Relic can address this issue, because I've seen it cropping up a bit more on Reddit in these last couple of patches. But if you are having performance problems, try dropping the polling rate on your mouse. And since we're on the topic, let's talk about mouse settings. I currently use the glorious Model D wireless, which was one of the lightest mice on the market when I purchased it. And I think lightness is important for reducing fatigue and RSI in the hand and wrist, which is something I have struggled with in the past and still do exercises most days to counteract. I like this video by Kimmy that gives instructions on what to use for mouse settings. He's an FPS gamer, but I think the principles for optimal mouse settings should apply to RTS as well. Applying the video's knowledge to my setup, I have 1600 DPI, 1000 Hz polling rate, which is the maximum for my mouse, motion sync off, lift off distance at the lowest, which is 1mm, debounce time of 6, which is what I feel comfortable with on my mouse, pointer precision off in the Windows settings, pointer speed at 5 out of 11, again this is what I feel comfortable with, and ceramic skates on the bottom of my mouse. For my mouse pad, I have the Kawa Oceanius that has a very low resistance when you start to move the mouse. It is quite fast compared to a lot of other pads during movement, but has more friction here than the hard plastic pads that I used to use, which I think aids control. Getting back to camera settings, I never use keyboard pan while gaming, but I have it set to the minimum for occasional use while watching replays. I have pan smoothing turned off. This means when I stop panning, the camera comes to an immediate halt. When pan smoothing is on, when I stop panning, the camera slows down quickly at first, easing to a halt after roughly half a second. While this may feel less jarring, I think it makes it harder to immediately move your mouse to a spot and select something after panning, because that object is still moving. Also, earlier in Code 3's history, pan smoothing used to cause performance drops. I don't think this is the case anymore, but I still don't trust it. I have camera shake set to 100%. While the camera is shaking, you can see the cursor moves on and off the unit's decorator, so camera shake can make it harder to select things, which obviously is a downside. However, the type and size of shake communicates information to you, including action that is happening off screen. I think this extra information is more beneficial than the selection difficulties are hurtful. Plus, camera shake adds to the immersion, making the game feel more intense during the climactic moments.
Tone and pace and immersion, really getting the player engaged in the experience.
For set max zoom out as default zoom, I have toggled it to on. With the default camera setting, you can zoom out one extra notch. But when you have this setting toggled on, you will always start each match at the maximum level of zoom out. Being at maximum zoom out allows for more units to fit on screen, and this can make it easier to control your army, especially for longer range units like the elephant. Some players like to rotate their camera so the enemy is always on the top side of the screen. This does give you a better view of what the enemy is doing and can help with army control, but I find it a bit confusing to me and my viewers when playing from different spawn points, so I choose not to do this. Next down the list are gameplay settings. I have player colors set to unique. This makes every player a different color when in a team game. This is helpful for identifying when you are getting double teamed by two players using the same faction, so you can respond to that threat more appropriately. With team-based colors, this is much harder to notice. Show color decals to structures only. This removes these stripes from vehicles. I think it makes the game look way better, though sometimes during a confusing battle, I find it hard to tell which direction my vehicle's hull is facing, and I wonder if it will be easier to tell which end was the front with decals turned on. I have turned exclusive control groups to on. This means that a unit can only belong to one control group at a time. This is how Code 2 functioned, so it is what I am used to, and sticking with this will allow me to swap back to playing Code 2 more smoothly. However, I do think that there could be advantages to having units in multiple control groups, so if you are looking to maximize your performance, turning this off might be worth exploring. Deliberate Battlegroup unlocking turned off. When this is on, you have to hit an extra confirm button every time you interact with the Battlegroup. This is good for avoiding mistakes while you are learning, but an annoying slowdown once you are familiar with the game. For global unit control position, I have chosen bottom left, in spite of Code 2 having it in the top right. I tried it in both positions and found that I was giving commands to units in the top right area, so having the GUC up there got in the way. Because I am a heavy tactical map user, I don't rely on the GUC very much, so out of the way is best for me. Next up are graphics settings. I have game window set to borderless full screen, because it makes alt-tabbing out and back into Code 3 smoother and faster. In Windows 11, go to Settings, System, Display, Graphics, and make sure that Optimizations for windowed games is turned on. This makes it so borderless should have minimal performance loss compared to exclusive full screen. Make sure that resolution scaling is turned off, unless you have a weak graphics card and you want to boost up your frame rate. If Relic ever update their upscaling technology to FSR 3.0 or newer, there could be an argument for using this instead of anti-aliasing, but not at the moment. For frame rate limit, I use uncapped in-game. Then I have set up a frame rate limit that is 2 FPS below my monitor's refresh rate, which is 165 Hz. I have an AMD graphics card, so to enable the frame rate limit, I open the Adrenaline software, go to the Gaming tab, go to Graphics, enable frame rate target control, and set the number. This setup is supposed to reduce stutter, and I think 163 Hz is fast enough for an RTS. Also, not having the menus of Code 3 running at maximum speed reduces the noise and heat from my computer while I'm searching for a game, which is handy during the hot summers. Alongside of this, if your monitor has variable refresh rate capabilities, which are also known as G-Sync or Adaptive Sync, then you will want to make sure that is turned on in the monitor and turned on in Windows. I have my brightness set to 30%, because I prefer most of the game's presentation this way. But unfortunately, it does tend to make night maps look too dark. Clamp mouse to window stops your cursor from going outside of the game if you have a multi-monitor setup. Very important if you edge scroll. Here's a troubleshooting top tip. In Code 3's past, the toggle for a setting could appear to be on, but not give the effect that it should. So if you think this is happening to you, toggle the setting off save settings, then toggle it back on and save again. This has fixed problems for me in the past and is an easy first step for troubleshooting. I have VSync turned off. I believe the framerate limiter and VRR settings that I covered earlier reduce the need for VSync, and I'm not very sensitive to tearing. I also did some testing with VSync on, and it hurt my performance in the 1% and 0.1% lows compared to my setup. For the performance and quality settings, you will have to adjust them to reach your desired frame rates on your hardware. Though be aware, the in-game graphics benchmark does have quite a lot of variation in how the simulation plays out in each test. So usually I run it 3 times and take an average when I do testing. Even if you have a super strong PC like me, I still recommend having image quality set at Ultra instead of Max. With Ultra, occasionally you will see a bit of blurriness on the edges of the screen. But with image quality Max turned on, performance is so much worse, especially when moving the camera around. I just don't think it is worth it at all. And if you have less than 12 GB of VRAM on your graphics card, then you may need to set textures below Ultra, otherwise you could get stutters. Second to last is audio. I have music set to 0 because I find it too hard to pick out the fine details in the soundscape while music is playing, such as an enemy vehicle engine in the Fog of War. In Code 2, some of the top players preferred to have the speech volume set higher than the sound effects, so they could hear the calls for help when their soldiers were dying more clearly. But I don't like it, because the sound effects feed you information that you might miss if they are too low, especially for action that is happening off screen, like the enemy attempting an attack ground shot from the Fog of War with their AT gun. And I rely more on visual information from the tactical map to keep track of my unit's health. To test which dynamic range setting was best, I recorded a battle with each setting, on replay mode with fixed camera on to give consistency between runs. One feature in Code 3 is that a lot of explosions have about 4 slightly different variations to them, so in spite of my efforts, this did introduce differences between each test. Comparing the loudness graphs for the 2 sound settings, we've got compressed on the left and wide on the right. And we're starting out with integrated. This is kind of like the average loudness over an extended period of time. And it takes a while to build up the average, but once it does, we can see that they are next to identical in the second half of each of these graphs. But if we switch to momentary, this is where the big difference is. You can see on compressed, the peaks are generally not as high as they are on wide, and same story. On wide, the troughs are quite a bit lower than they are on compressed. So this is why I think compressed is the best setting, because I don't want my ears getting blown out by loud explosion noises. But same story, I want the lows to be boosted up a bit. There might be some important intel like an engine in the Fog of War that I want to be boosted up so I can hear it and give me the gameplay edge. So that's why I think compressed is the best setting for Code 3. For your audio device settings in Windows, according to the YouTube channel Decals, an audio buffer size of 256 is best for reducing audio delay in games. So that is what I have set in my USB DAC. And if Code 3's sound is really weird with loud water and wildlife noises, then open up Sound Properties and turn Spatial Sound off. Last up is online. I have allowed chat messages from everyone. A bit of trash talk doesn't really bother me, and on the rare occasion that I play team games, chat can help with coordination. But if you are in the low ranks with a lot of griefers, then I can understand if you want chat turned off, which it is by default. Let me know in the comments if there are any settings you think that I overlooked or got wrong. And if you found this video helpful, I hope you consider coming on board as a Patreon backer.